Everybody in the place, make some noise for Tiësto. Brothers and sisters of Tomorrowland, he is our godfather. Make some noise for the one and only Tiësto.
BC lingo, burn rate, cliff. People need to know what these terms mean. Check size, bootstrapping, traction, because these terms are actually quite substantial and can change the outcomes of your business. IPO, I've done one of those. What do VCs really want? Agreeing to terms which you don't understand. Liquidity, obviously it's going to make you fearful and probably not negotiating in the most rational manner. Due diligence. Most of the time, the people on the other side of the table are actually trying to help you succeed. Don't you trust me? But there are standard practices that you should be aware of. Boards, what are they for? And there are some players that you have to be careful about. Oh, don't you trust me? But there are standard practices that you are. Thank you for coming. So it's important for people to get access to and understand what this term. Don't you trust me? But there are standard practices that you. Access to and understand. But there are standard practices that
There are some men that are an inspiration for multiple generations of artists. A true godfather and a loved member of the Tomorrowland tribe. We consider ourselves a family, but every family is lucky to have an exceptional talent like this to call their own. Please show your love for the legendary artist we call Tiësto.
Tiësto. Are you guys ready to party? We're back in 2001. 1, 2. Come on, at this party time!
Bring that ass back like a boom, 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 boom.
night, September, love was changing the minds, pretender, while chasing the clouds away. Our hearts were ringing in the key that souls were singing as we danced in the night. Remember how the stars stole the night away. Do you remember 21st night, September? Love was changing the minds, pretender, while chasing the clouds away. Our hearts were ringing in the key that souls were singing as we danced in the night. Remember how the stars stole the night away.
Oh boy. There we go. All right, hello everyone. Panelists, please turn on your video and audio.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you all for being here. I think this will be a lot of fun. What we are going to try to do is go through some fun and interesting GPT-3 projects. And then we're gonna have a brief interlude in the middle where John will be playing Moonlight Sonata on the piano behind him. We got a lot of submissions, and obviously there's a lot of excitement around this, and I think a lot of people will be curious to hear your feedback. What we're gonna try to do is we're gonna bring folks onto the Zoom. We'll try to very quickly ask them to go through what they built, and then just maybe talk to them about what they built, if that makes sense. I don't have a particularly prescriptive format in mind, so we could take it any direction you guys want. I will briefly introduce people, since I'll just do that much faster, I think, and it'll be an opportunity for you to understand how I misunderstand your career. John Collison obviously is an employee of a small company called Stripe. Nat runs a company called GitHub. Andrej used to work at OpenAI and now runs AI and autonomy at Tesla. Elad started a company called Color Genomics, which uses, amongst other things, I'd imagine, artificial intelligence to to help predict disease, and is an investor in I think many of the one company on this Zoom call, and many others like Airbnb and Gusto and Instacart. All that being said, I think we should get started. Andrej, at some point, I do think if we have time, it would be awesome to spend a couple of minutes on your project, if you will. I'll turn you into an attendee. I think it'd be very interesting to talk about that. But let's see how much progress we can make. We have about 12 or 13 people. We had obviously many more, and it was hard for me to trim it down. So I'm going to stop talking now, and we're going to start bringing people up. We have Risha here behind the scenes helping us out. So to kick things off, I think we're going to start with Teddy, who is working.
Perfect.
One of the classic GPT-3 use cases, but I'm going to let you reveal to us what it is. Teddy, tell us a little bit, just start off with where you are and what you're building.
What I'm building is called Enzyme. It's basically a software that builds software. I've been exploring this space for a while now, but with GPT-3, it was really the missing piece. What it does essentially is you explain what you want to build in pure native English, and then I'm able to extract the tonality of it and a bunch of different characteristics that I need. I'm using that to hook up with what I was working previously, and I'm able to create production-ready websites essentially.
Do you have a demo you could show us?
I have a video. I'm on my phone. I don't have my laptop nearby me, so I can share my screen real quick if you want. Here, there you go. All right, so in this example here, I'm basically explaining a little dropshipping e-commerce website. So I'm saying, like, I want to build dropshipping website. I don't know how to do it. I want to sell essentially beds for pets. So I want GPT-3 to build one for me. And I want to have few dog photos. They're happy playing outside. That's what I'm explaining. Wait a second. Okay, so the website is ready right away. I'm querying the GPT-3 API, and here's what I'm getting. And this is basically production-ready website. It's typical e-commerce. It has pictures from what I requested, which is pictures from dogs. and I have simple layout that looks like e-commerce website. And basically right now, this is only on my local machine, and the plan is to release it by 14th of November this year.
What do people think?
So what is it actually generating in this case? Is it filling in a template, or is it generating like all of the HTML and backend code, or what's the actual sort of scope of flexibility the model has?
It's basically a few different things. So it's really easily maintainable HTML at the end. You're getting HTML, you're getting CSS. For this example, I'm using a bunch of different templates, and just because it's e-commerce and it has images from docs, there's product layout that I'm including. There's e-commerce header. There's I don't know, icons of shop now, like little cards. So those kinds of things. I have a bunch of different components. So I'm trying to figure out what the right component is, what the color is, and yeah, it's you can take this generated code and just keep building on top of it if you want that. Yeah.
That was going to be my question about building on top of it. Is obviously, I mean, this is a great labor-saving device to get your initial website off the ground, but you always want to make various tweaks and kind of interact with the help that the AI is giving you. And so do you have thoughts on the right? Feels like we haven't figured out the UIs yet. It's like, okay, that website is almost right, but now I need to change, the inventory and wire up a few different things. What's the right interaction style? Because it's not going to be totally hands-free.
Yeah, definitely not. This is really great for you to kickstart the website, and right away, I don't have it in the demo, but you can change using the designer mode of Chrome, for example. You can change the text, you can change the pictures. But I want to make it easier for people to basically kickstart their website, and later on we can add a bunch of drag and drop functionalities, which I really want to avoid. And if I have a way to make it as a conversational interface, how you build, not just build, but also manage your website, that would be my goal. But for now, it's just the initial version of the site, and just helping you to start with it. So
I'm sure you've already considered this, but I've also seen some people looking at GPT-3 as a way to also optimize traffic. So once you have the website, you can start driving traffic. And obviously that'll come later after some of these things you and John just discussed. But I mean, also worth be considering, if it can quickly help SEO a website or optimize it for other purposes or generate SEM keywords or other things, then, anything that will drive traffic for people tends to be a big plus for folks who aren't necessarily as savvy in terms of setting some of these things up. So it seems like some really interesting directions you could take this on as you think of the next features in the future.
Yeah, I see.
To be honest, I'm still in a bit of a disbelief that any of this kind of works. So can we just clarify what just happened? So you put in a bit of text, and then this outputs the HTML and the CSS, and it's a functional website. You can just open it in the browser and it works. I guess exactly. How often does this work? How cherry-picked are these examples? I'm still in a state of disbelief. So have you tried other things, or yeah?
Yeah, so as I said before, prior to GPT-3, I was using simple JSON schema or XML schema to explain what I want to build just by creating the models. And this is more on the API side of things. But with GPT-3, and that was something I've been trying on earlier in my life, trying to kind of figure out from plain English what people want to build. And with GPT-3, it was really, really simple to extract those keywords that I need. So yeah, I'm generating production-ready website, and it works. And I mean, I can definitely show and share some of the other examples. I have a few production apps that are out there.
Excellent. I am unfortunately going to have to cut you off because we are out of time. But I think more examples would obviously be great. We'll set up a mailing list, by the way, after this, if people want a place to send more content to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your feedback.
Cheers, cheers. Next up, we have Matt. I believe Matt is somewhere in the US. He'll tell us where. Matt is working on a very, I think a very obvious idea to all of us who are stuck in our inboxes all day. Matt, tell us a bit about it.
So hi, my name is Matt Shumer. I am the co-founder and the CEO of OtherSide AI. So first question I have is, how much time do you spend on average writing emails? I mean, it's everybody's answer is too much. I mean, the average professional spends 2.6 hours on a daily basis writing emails, an average of 120 messages, which is crazy. I mean, how are people supposed to get work done, do what they want to do? So we thought, what would happen, like everybody else is thinking, if we could use GPT-3 to speed this up. So I'm happy to show you a demo.
Demo, Matt.
So here is an example email that I received. And just to speed things up, because I do only have 2 minutes, I'm going to paste in some bullets and click generate. And so what you'll see is you don't actually have to type in anything in terms of niceties, in terms of names. It does it all for you. You just type in the things that you want to get across. And it outputs a really well-written email, which is really exciting because it saves you so much time. I mean, I put in 13 words there and it put out an entirely ready to go, well-written email. So, the market wants this. We have already been featured in the New York Times. We have 3,000 subscribers on our waiting list, and it's growing every single day. You can sign up at othersideai.com. And if you want to reach out, my email is matt@othersideai.com. So thank you.
Is text expander but smart the way to think about what you're doing?
Exactly. It's just email at the start, but we could see this going in many different directions, of course.
Yeah, I definitely think this is incredible. Gmail already does a little bit of autocomplete for you, but it's only a few words and it's kind of a hit and miss. So I definitely want this. This looks incredible.
Could you offer the reverse service too, where it's like, this is a dumb idea, do not email me again, is like what it parses out from that like page of email?
Not just that. So basically after we posted the first demo and the response was amazing, half the comments were, can you please make a summarizer? Because not just summaries, the amount of emails that people get on a daily basis that are kind of nonsensical and kind of could be just formatted better, it's super easy to do. So we actually built that. We posted that as well. We're going to integrate that next. We want to prove our core assumptions first before doing so. But until then, we're focusing on the generator. But we also have a couple of things in the works that are even beyond that. So imagine summarizing an entire email chain so you don't have to read through it. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
I would feed all of Vlad's emails through this. So yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of funny that there's a serializer and a deserializer at one end. You write the bullet points, the thing writes a longer email, and then the thing at the other end reconverts that back to bullet points. But are you going to make an email client?
We don't plan to. The idea is that most of the professionals are going after Gmail at the start. We do plan to support other web-based clients, and we do think that we will be able to license to other clients in the near future. The idea is that if we become the company that kind of centralizes all of this and we have that data advantage, it's going to be better for everybody if we work on all systems. That said, who knows, 10 years, 5 years down the line, it could be a possibility.
How much have you looked into scheduling and then also into more verticalized jargon use cases?
We have. I don't want to speak too much about it because it is part of our plans. Scheduling specifically, the network effect that comes with that is going to be the kind of key factor that basically scales this. The idea is to prove our core assumptions with this generator, but the idea is once we integrate things like that, it'll help us scale this much quicker, both in terms of utility and in terms of creating a network effect. So we are definitely thinking about that.
Yeah, that feels like a huge time saver.
Yeah, one of the challenges we've sometimes seen with GPT-3 is that it can be very confidently wrong. And so I think something that would scare me about this is if it converts my bullet into a sentence, which means exactly the opposite. So I don't know, how would you deal with that so that I can feel confident in just clicking send?
We are experiencing that. So I'm not going to lie. This thing is not ready for 100% no checking send. We don't want to say that we're going to be able to do that yet. The idea is that it's going to save you time on 60 to 80% of your emails. And most of the ones that it doesn't work perfectly for, it's just a couple quick edits. The idea is also we can have a regenerate button. So we're adding that in before the beta starts so that you can kind of just press it again. But we see that as being something that's easily fixable over the next few months.
Another thing that might be interesting is just to automatically populate drafts for all my emails, draft replies. So I can just go in and pick the ones that I want, like an affirmative reply, a negative reply, and just edit those.
We've been exploring that. The problem with that is that we can give, for example, 3 responses with 3 different predicted bullets. The reason we're doing bullets is because it kind of adds a little bit of a human in the loop sort of thing where you are giving some input and making some sort of decision there. So it won't be possible for every email, but for very simple emails, that's definitely possible. But then again, Google's doing a little bit of that. So we're not sure it makes any sense for us to try to get into that space. But who knows, maybe there is a reason to.
Matt, thank you so much. This was really cool. I think we all would potentially be users. And I would like to do, by the way, two things before we bring up our next speaker. One is to pre-apologize to anyone in advance. I will be cutting you off just so that we can get through to everyone. And then the second is I should probably mention, now that we have a bit of a base of people watching, that none of these are like officially endorsed by OpenAI in any way. And obviously this whole thing, including GPT-3 itself, is a bit of an experiment, as well as this demo day. Next up, we have Qasim, who can correct me if I mispronounced their name. And we're going to be talking about a pretty popular category with all GPT-3s, which is kind of writing assistants. As we pull them up, they also reported, we asked, by the way, everyone, kind of interesting nuggets of weird or unusual things they built early on in life. And Qasim was a drop shipper originally, which is kind of cool. That's how everyone starts out. So tell us very quickly just how to properly pronounce your name, and also what you're building.
So yeah, my name is Qasim. I'm in London right now. But yeah, I've been building Shortly for the past like 3 years, which is an app for writing short stories. The way I've integrated GPT-3 is pretty simple. On the writing page, you have a button labeled "Write for me," and the usual use case is that a writer may be writing and then they may get stuck or have writer's block. They can't think of any creative ways to take the story, so they just simply click "Write for me," and then the AI is able to continue writing the story, either generating new creative plots, continuing new story developments. And then the writer has the choice to either discard the output of the AI or edit it slightly or continue the story in that direction. The way I initially thought of it was as if you're having a creative friend who's with you whilst you're writing, who you can turn to at any time. But that has slightly changed. I've been speaking to some users who have been using it daily. And what I've learned is that a really powerful moment for them is when they have an idea in their head, they've created a character in their own heads, or how their world should be, but they can't really express it. And so they click the "Write for me" button. And as it's able to take in the context of what they have written so far, it's able to a lot of times really capture the personalities that they are trying to express, and express it in a way that they wanted to express it. So now the way I think of it now is
just as you talk,
instead of just a friend,
we could get a sense of
yes, this is the demo. Instead of just having a friend who you can turn to whilst you're writing, it's almost an extension of your own creativity. And what further reinforced this is one of my users actually messaged me saying, who's interested in AI, he's messaged me saying, I would pay a significant amount actually if I could train it on my own stories, my own work. So yeah, and this is the demo, as you can see.
So is the idea here that you're writing stories and this provides you completions for what you're writing?
Yeah, exactly. It's almost it's essentially a creative writing assistant.
I see. And so is what you're building really a kind of a better Microsoft Word for creative writing?
I guess remember the paperclip, the paperclip of Microsoft Word, a really advanced version of that, baby.
You're building better Clippy, right? Okay.
One question I have is about the context you're feeding the model. So are you just kind of giving it the prior 2,000 words? Or like one thing that could be interesting is to provide some structured data, like here are the characters and here's brief descriptions of them, so that it could generate things that aren't pure extrapolations of like the most recent text, in addition to some of the most recent text.
Yeah, definitely. So that's a lot of feedback I have been getting has been things along those lines where you can specifically prompt it, maybe even have multiple AIs as different characters, and then you can call on them whenever you want. A bunch of ideas. I purposefully launched it with very broad functionality so that I can see how people would use it and where I should focus on later. But yeah, so for now it's still just it feeds in. The context is fed in is a few good stories, and because Shortly, the whole idea of it is writing short stories. So there's a limit on how much you can write. So you're always able to feed in how much you've written so far to GPT-3 to generate the output. So it's fed in with a few really good stories and the start of your story.
Excellent. Qasim, thank you very much. This was very cool. Next, we are going to chat with Jeanne, who's working on contextual reference recommendations using GPT-3. She also previously built a dedicated Bitcoin miner, which is kind of cool.
Hey, how's it going? Good. So what I'm building is basically something that takes a tweet or.
If you could,
I'm sorry.
Show us a demo or something as you talk. I think that would be
yeah
for our minds.
Is my screen sharing?
Yes, it's beautiful.
Okay, so it's called contextualize, and what it does is it takes a tweet or a sentence, and it basically leverages the completion to basically give references or concepts around the topic that you might have tweeted. So, for example, here, well, it's primed to really take in a tweet in this format. So I'm just going to click on show my references. Yeah, so the first thing it gives is basically the related concepts that are currently well understood. It lists family, parent, child, and then it goes on to give basically what you need to further study to understand more deeply the topic in your tweet. And then it goes to use completion by emulating how you would think about completing the tweet. And then by using that, basically what it's doing currently is that it's taking the keywords, plugging it into Google Books API and recommending a bunch of text related to your original tweet. So it's giving context around recommendations based on content and context. So that's it.
How exactly are you using GPT-3 here? Like how,
so I'm calling the engine 3 times, and I'm priming it 3 different ways, and also using 3 different sets of parameters. That's how I'm doing it right now.
Is the intent is the intent here in part to help people think before they tweet?
It's maybe more for just understanding what's behind the tweet. So if someone talks about a specific topic, I might be interested in, where does that come from? How can I, fact check this? What are the other concepts that are related to what's contained within the tweet? But essentially it's meant to be a research tool of sorts. So a very interactive one where it can know how you think or how someone you would follow would think, and then complete the thought, and then sort of build the knowledge base or context behind that. Yeah.
Have you found better results with the recommended texts than just kind of a basic keyword relevance search? I'm curious kind of what benefit we're getting there.
Well, one of the ideas that I was thinking of doing was to basically access the sort of the raw vectors from the model, and to be able to do sort of perhaps a distance metric. Right now, there's no other way for me to do it besides just pulling out the keywords. So this is a really primitive example of what I'd like to do, but there are different methods that I'm currently exploring.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeanne.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a very interesting use case. I'll let Tyler speak to it for himself. Tyler previously built CarPlay or Android Auto manually before Apple and Google did it, which is kind of cool.
Oh, I have a background. That's interesting. Sorry.
Tyler, come back to so also tell us.
I'll just share my screen right away, because I have a demo. So.
Came prepared for Daniel's question.
Building
so
on Mars.
So can you see my screen now?
No, we still see you somewhere. I don't even know what planet that. I'm not convinced that's Earth. Okay, there we go.
All right, perfect. So I currently run strategy at Generated Photos, which is one of the larger synthetic media companies in AI right now. And I started working with GPT-3 as a way to see if I could do NLP search over our actual generation methods. So effectively producing synthetic media from just natural language. So just playing around with it. And so mine's more of a true like demo than anything else. But beyond that, I have gotten a million questions on GPT-3 and synthetic media together since then. So I've decided to form my own side venture called Honest AI, which is meant to be a community that brings together like real world use cases around AI and people working in AI, and then kind of create a marketplace between those. So my first demo of many that I have written now is using synthetic media to make personas. So in this, you just describe a person in natural language. Here I have already pasted the text in. So, young white man with green eyes that works in internet software, lives in San Francisco, and loves plants. So you hit generate. Oh, my loader's not loading, but it normally will. So it will output a portfolio, or just basically a mock LinkedIn page in this case, where it actually goes through and it creates a huge swath of data behind the scenes. So it's 6 calls to OpenAI, where every call is feeding in successive context to the next. So it can create a very rich persona. It comes up with where they work, their job titles, their career progression, all of the different metadata behind that. So it's basically a pretty advanced bot. But then the next cool part about that is you can actually directly message them, and they are aware of, where did you work? And so it's very active. It works quite well. They know what time they started their jobs, where they work, who their boss is, and I give them a fairly good amount of creative liberty to come up with that. You can feed in as much information as you want, and yeah, it gets quite detailed.
So how do we use this bot army to steal the election?
I actually have tried it with political stuff, and it's very happy to give you political advice. And so I haven't released this just because it works very well. I would say it has a 95% hit rate in the comments. And so I've had, 45 message discussions with it. I do backfeed all of the chats back to it. So you're successively building the prompts. And with that, it understands the context of the situation, and it uses the last message. So it has about a 20-25 message history that it can have using context stuffing to do that.
I can't help notice the dates are wrong here. Or no, is Brian claiming he got promoted in 2017 to senior engineer?
I actually see that too. This is the first time I've ever seen the dates be wrong. So I've tried it a million times, but
for bot.
Can we hook this up to can we hook this up to Stripe Atlas so that Brian could form a new company with some of the other bots?
Yeah, and I mean, the way I see this working is, these profiles and identities are exportable. And so you can save all the context from the prompts. And so say, I don't really know if I have a plan to productize this, to be honest. My product is a community where people build all sorts of stuff like this. I'm not entirely convinced of the defensibility on prompts and all of that yet. But where you could see this used is like a non-playable character in a game or something like that, where you could just upload a whole identity that's already prepackaged. And again, this image is generated, right? It's fully synthetic. Everything on this page is context relevant. This is a background from San Francisco, I hope. This is a background from an office. Like, it's all pulling in contextual data.
Yeah, I was about to ask, what are you using for the image generation?
The image generation up here is just Unsplash, but with keywords that are tagged in. And so it's basically hooking up to a number of APIs. So the Generated Photos API, Unsplash API, and an API called Brand Fetch that gets more reliable logos for the actual companies and education, because it comes up with all of that. Again, the only input is what I typed.
Super interesting.
It's a good way to populate your community.
Yeah, or fake data, or like in Stripe's case, you could test user data without having to use real stuff.
Right. There's an adjacent market that I'm sure you've thought about, which is using this to detect bots.
Yes. Mm-hmm. There's a big demand for that. In synthetic media in general, we get lots of questions about that.
Yes. Right. Sometimes you need to study the dark arts in order to learn how to defeat them.
Also video games, of course.
I don't know what video games you're playing. I would love to play video games with LinkedIn profiles. Maybe that's
not literally LinkedIn profiles.
Maybe that's called life. Okay, well, thank you very much. This was fascinating. I think we're all kind of curious and mystified to see where you take this. Next up, we have two presentations, working on presentations. This is a very popular category. So we're going to start off with Sumanth, who's in India. They actually claim that they have pretty much rebuilt Office with a team of 6 people. But that's an adjacent claim to this one. You should probably focus on the GPT bits of it, and then we can maybe talk about the broader thing later. But give us a demo and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, let me just start right away with that. I'm sharing my screen. I hope you can see it.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great.
I love it. I love it already.
You should update.
So the idea here is that, hundreds of millions of people create billions of presentations each year, but it's still very difficult to create a good presentation. You need time, you need effort, and you need design skills. But what if there was an easier way, right? So let's say there were 2 young entrepreneurs who wanted to create a pitch deck for their small startup Stripe. And instead of actually having to create a presentation, all you needed to do was type out a narrative like this, and then you click on the submit button.
Demos don't work, by the way. That's part of the fun. So
no, this will work. So this is where our app presentations.ai comes in. So what we are doing here is we are using GPT-3 to let anyone effortlessly create amazing presentations in just a matter of a few seconds, right? So what we have done here is we have actually created a pitch deck for Stripe. And let me just take you into the actual slideshow. Right, so this is it's a quick and dirty demo, but the idea here is that instead of actually having to think about design and things like that, you just focus on the content and you let the app do all the heavy lifting on the design side.
What elements of GPT-3 are here? How did you bring it in?
Yeah, I'll just show that to you. So GPT-3 is very good in 2 things, right? In pattern matching and slot filling. And that's exactly what we are using here. So you can actually see the sample here where we have actually trained it with Pied Piper from Silicon Valley. And so this is an example that we are actually doing for GitHub, and I can show you how that version will look like. So we're using GPT-3 here to actually take this content and generate a JSON representation of that content that works inside our presentation engine. And the presentation itself is fully editable. So you can create a presentation like this, and every aspect of this is editable. You can edit the text, you can change the images, you can do everything. So the idea here is that it can also generate things like charts off the bat.
Yes.
Right. So so this is pretty much it. So provide a drop dead simple way for people to create amazing presentations.
Update that slide there on the CEO, but that's okay. This is very cool, very visual, great work. I mean, it seems like presentations.ai, independent of GPT-3, is obviously pretty comprehensive. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Next up, we have an adjacent example of this. Dan is working on, Dan used to be a semi-professional poker player. Hi.
Gotta pay rent.
Generator.
Semi-professional mean like somehow.
So it turns out like games aren't great all the time, so there's no real reason to play poker Monday through Thursday, which opens me up to do other stuff. But still gotta pay rent, so that's what my weekends are for.
Professional on the weekends.
Yeah.
So give us a demo and tell us and show us what you're building.
Yeah, for sure. Hey guys, thanks everyone for joining. Before I show my demo, I do want to just share a little bit of context, especially for those of the viewers who may be a little bit less familiar with corporate America, just about how PowerPoint is used and what's interesting about the project I'm working on. So here,
I'm going to let you do this, but I will ask for the favor of everyone else watching that you try to talk as quickly as possible through this.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just an example presentation produced by a consulting firm on the Chinese luxury market. I won't worry too much about the content, but I will call out just how dense these slides are, right? So lots of graphs, lots of bullets, lots of information. And so the reason I'm showing you guys this deck is to illustrate how PowerPoint is used to tell stories. In this case, it's a story about the Chinese luxury market, but you can imagine a similar presentation for whether to launch a new product, whether to acquire a company, and so on and so forth. And so the thing about telling stories, especially in a medium like PowerPoint, is that it's really hard and it's a skill that takes time to pick up. So there's this interesting presentation by Charles Harris. They're a headhunting firm. They recruit consultants that just kind of lays out how much time consultants spend building PowerPoint slides. And it's a lot. So from talking to friends, from personal experience, we're talking maybe 20 to 30% of an average consultant's week is spent literally just making a PowerPoint slide. And these are, highly compensated people. We're talking $100,000 a year. And so with that context, let me shift to the demo. Here, like imagine you're a recent graduate of Harvard and you're excited to start your first day on the job. Your supervisor comes and says, hey, I want you to make a slide that shows revenue of our client by year, by region, as well as average sales rep performance. So what we can do, imagine you're that consultant, you type up this description, just run this script, and then we will create this slide. So you can see how we've gone from the text description to an actual PowerPoint slide. And full
Where does the data come from here?
Yeah, so full disclosure, I'm not super technical, but I basically just generated fake data for this use case. And then the idea would be you plug in your Excel sheet separately. And so again, full disclosure, like I've spent basically a weekend putting this together. I haven't necessarily tested the full capabilities of GPT-3, but you can imagine how this is the first step in a variety of applications in terms of how you actually tell business stories through PowerPoint. Because obviously just converting from a text description to a graph is not all that you do in PowerPoint. And so to any investors out there, happy to share the full vision. You can email me at, I'll type my email in the chat. And then
it's a great flag. On that topic, if anyone's watching, we do have a nifty internal UI that lets people follow each other. If you don't see follow buttons, you may want to refresh. Behind the scenes, the team just deployed an update.
If you're watching on the Pioneer site, you mean?
If you're on the Pioneer site. If you're on Zoom, I can't help you, but we will connect everyone afterwards, yes.
Cool. So that concludes my demo. Let me know if you have any questions.
Awesome. We are slightly behind time, and so I'm going to move us along. If with your permission, Dan.
Yeah, of course.
Pretty cool. Next up, thank you very much, Dan. Next up, we have Seva, who was working on another prompt variant of GPT-3. The youngest full-time engineer at VK, started at 15 and started managing people at 16.
Yeah. So, thanks for having me, Daniel. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So when I
that early, but please go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks for having me. And when I got the access to GPT-3, I decided not to do something with GPT-3 itself, but rather something for GPT-3 developers. #Stripe. And I decided to do an advanced playground for testing ideas and making something cool with GPT-3. So the core feature would be the workspaces where you can briefly experiment with different drafts that you making on GPT-3. So when the current playground of OpenAI has only one text field, and it they just had a new update with some sort of savings functionality. But so
OpenAI require you. You built a better OpenAI playground.
Exactly. Yeah. That's true. So yeah, and so you can rename a prompt. You can have it. It's actually saved in the local storage, so it saves if you upload the page. You can download it through file to put an inversion control, and we also have a handy templates library. And the other big part of that I focused on, it was to work with specific GPT-3 use cases to build a better playground for the concrete use cases. So for example, for variations, that could be generating different type of variations of the same prompt. It's very useful for creative writing. So we don't have to like copy paste and delete text in the prompt in the playground. We just have to press one button to generate, and then scroll through a list of generated text. And another example would be, I would say, they're the same name now. That would be examples or test case where we have a same prompt and we have a example placeholder, and we can run that and like see the impact. For example, we change the prompt because the way like everything is related to prompts. If you change a prompt, the data will change, and you can experiment with the prompt and see the impact of a prompt change on a few examples that you have. And I also have
do you
like
save all the output that's generated? Because like is that persisted?
Yes, I do for variations and I do for simple mode, but I don't for actually you can view the previous output, but not all of the outputs.
Got it. Yeah. Cool.
So this is like a new IDE for like a new programming paradigm, basically.
Exactly, and that's what I'm trying to build it to. So it would be like a first IDE for prompt engineering, which some call the future of programming and that type of stuff. Yeah, and also we have code generator if you're still using like usual code or whatever.
It does feel like the beginning of a new programming era. You talk to people who have been engineering GPT-3, and that feels like something you can get a degree in, but it's basically just prompts.
Yeah, that's true.
Very cool. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. This is really cool.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Oh, it's by the way, it's live at prompts.ai. I just got reviewed by OpenAI team, so feel free to use it. Fellow GPT-3 users.
I'm already on it actually right now.
Thank you.
Nat has a history of being first to scenes, but weren't you like one of the very early GitHub, probably GitHub, but I was going to say Stripe users too?
Reasonably early, I think. John could say.
Irresponsibly early.
Yeah. Next up, we have Keshav, who has an interesting medical use case for GPT-3. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is build a digital assistant for private practices, and specifically we're focused on mental health professionals. So quick context, during COVID-19, we saw tons of therapists let go of billing and administrative assistants. And not only that, faced tons of problems with generating things around CPT codes, which is all about what medical billing is. So I can show a quick example. Let me share my screen. Perfect. Cool. So right here, let's say you did a group therapy session with Kevin for 45 minutes. So we'll generate a snippet, and what it'll do is output a JSON that eventually will lead to hope you guys can see this, an insurance bill that was automatically filled out. Let's do another quick example. Let's say it was an individual psychotherapy session. So I did a psychotherapy session with Jack for 60 minutes. And then in a few seconds, we'll be able to, yep, there we go. And then it gives you the right CPT code right there. And then we can just reload that. Perfect, Jack's there. The goal here is to integrate it with our website, which we're working full-time on with my friend Anirudh Iyengar. And yeah, we have payments, patients, and a profile set up. So the goal is to create a digital assistant for private practices. Thank you.
Do you have a way of testing the like the brittleness of the parsing versus real world human input? Because I think anytime you see large amounts of input from humans, you're like, wow, there's a lot of different ways to express things. Humans are pretty wild.
Yeah, this is something we definitely have to work on. Obviously, there are potential of error, and oftentimes, like a therapist, for example, could just write a whole line of sentences, and definitely need to spend some time thinking about that for the future. But one thing I will say is that in terms of like an additional future feature that we want to build is potentially adding a clinical node to the super bill, and that will require a little bit more context when they describe that.
How much have you thought about creating a feedback loop to actually train the psychotherapist, whoever's actually entering the information? Because I mean, if you look at hand-mapped CPT codes and billing and everything else, it's incredibly messy, and it's often has to do with the person doing the coding as well as their understanding of what to actually bill against.
Yeah, good question. So that's why right now we took a simple use case, and it's super easy to do a lot of priming with the psychotherapy CPT codes. But when we get into like deeper medical context, you know, let's say something in oncology, that will require much more validation. So for now, we're just testing it one use case at a time.
How many psychotherapy CPT codes are there?
There's around, from what I remember, around 7 to 8. But then it gets confusing. What we saw was this issue with telehealth CPT codes being a different CPT code than a regular in-person psychotherapy CPT code. Yeah.
Cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing is we just don't want it to be only for CPT codes. We'd eventually want to automate different workflow aspects in the private practice. Let's say payments, for example, or even just understanding what's happening with a patient, especially if you're running a telehealth practice.
Cool. Thank you very much. This is very cool.
Thank you.
Next, we have Sebastian, who is the only real gaming use case we got. Gaming in an interesting variant of gaming. Not exactly what you'd think. I'm gonna let Sebastian explain once Eric lets him on. Sebastian.
Hello. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay. I'll just jump straight into it then. So my name's Sebastian Parfitt. I'm a game developer working in collaboration with our executive producer Guy Gadney and my friend and AI geek Connor Lee, who are watching. So I'm project lead on Project Electric Sheep. It's a game I'm currently developing, which I am really excited to show to you guys today. So the project is an AI-powered dream simulation game. The game begins with the player going to bed, typing in anything they possibly wish to dream about, and going to sleep. We then use GPT-3 together with more traditional generation techniques to automatically create a unique dream world based around the player's chosen topic, which the player then wakes up in and is free to explore. In this example, we are dreaming about President Kermit, America's first Muppet president, who, according to this guy right here, was actually chosen by 53% of the people last year. So that's nice. Now, of course, not even the largest writing team in the world could ever write dialogue for any topic imaginable. So as you probably have guessed, the dialogue is generated by GPT-3, of course, with helps from our prompts. So the player then can walk around and chat to various characters and listen to their different takes on, in this case, President Kermit. This guy is warning off a Muppet dictatorship. So here we've actually found a character playing the role of President Kermit himself. He's currently explaining his political platform to us. We can also ask or say absolutely anything to these characters and receive an organic, relevant response, something which until now has, of course, not been possible in a video game. We are also adding GPT-3 written media, such as books, newspapers, pamphlets, and posters. The aim here is very much to use GPT-3 together with procedural generation and other AI trickery to allow the player to experience a dynamic world in which everything is unashamedly fake and synthetic, but also eerily convincing. We very much hope that by exploring this world, it'll prompt the player to reflect a little bit on the importance of critical thinking to identify disingenuous information, as well as, of course, the AI, the role that AI has to play in the near future. These are also topics which we'll be weaving into a more traditional linear story, hidden away within deeper levels of dreams. We hope that this project's humorous, interactive, and cost-free form factor will promote these topics amidst sort of younger, non-tech nerd audiences. That's the project. Thank you very much for your time.
So this is kind of like AI Dungeon, but taken to a whole new level.
Absolutely, yes. We were actually in contact with Nick there, and it's similar but different. It's more structured and less complete free for all, anything goes.
Do you do anything to seed the characters to be different, or do you just rely on them randomly being different?
We'd actually no. We do that actually quite easily. So the player chooses a topic. In this case, President Kermit, and then we can literally just say to GPT-3, "Hey, this is a video game. Each level has a theme. This level's theme is President Kermit. Some characters the player can talk to are," and then we can just generate however many player characters we need. And of course, if it generates a character called President Kermit will already be saying, "Hey, I'm President Kermit. This is what I stand for." You don't need to ask him about that. Merely by giving him that name, he's already got a lot of the.
Okay, so the names of the characters are essentially the seed, and that's enough to go with.
Yes. Yes.
How, just curious, having played with this for a while, what's your outlook on using AI to produce custom entertainment? Do you think this is very near term? It's going to be huge. There'll be lots of categories, or just what's your viewpoint?
I mean, I don't think it's anything for the mainstream quite yet. This is very much an AI game about AI. Its core purpose is to push dialogue and discussion about AI. I mean, it's already far more usable. This project's been around a while, and it was originally using GPT-2. And of course, the leap from GPT-2 to GPT-3 just completely changed how it changed the experience of chatting to a character. It was originally very abstract and surreal, and it's certainly become a lot more usable, that's for sure.
I certainly think like NPCs are the least immersive part of lots of video games. So yes. I really want this to work as a gamer.
The goal eventually is to also pull textures, sort of royalty-free textures, so that when you're chatting to Kermit, he will have Kermit's face. We can use sort of face detection and so forth, and potentially use other AI techniques such as style transfer and so forth to pull off some neat tricks to sort of automate creativity.
Also, just it feels like bizarreness is when, in my playing with GPT-3, the bizarre stuff is the most fun, and that I'm really excited for video games that are more creative than maybe humans could have come up with.
Absolutely, yeah. No, the frame narrative of entering a dream sort of allows us a lot of creative license there. Like especially with GPT-2, it was completely essential because back then it was just completely surreal. Yeah.
I mean, the additional thing is like you want to. You want there to be some repercussions of this dialogue, right? So you want to somehow, like the role of the player should be to coerce the NPC to say something that actually ties into some action in the game and things like that, yes. Right? They will help you, or they will fight you, or etc.
Yeah, so originally we sort of played with the ideas of generated quests and using GPT-3 there. What we're definitely going to be doing is sort of just having this sandbox exploration experience, but then, as I mentioned, having a hidden narrative, telling a relatively linear story, but where some of the dialogue with NPCs is actually scripted by us, but also some of the NPC dialogue is seeded with sort of, you are an NPC pretending to play the role of Kermit the Frog, but actually you know that you've been created by an AI and you do not wish the player to understand this. Then you can really interrogate and actually organically try and get information from these NPCs.
Half bots, half humans seems like a great Turing test in this video game. Then you just need to gamify the discovery.
Yeah.
It's like Minecraft, where half of the players are GPTs and you don't know.
I'm going to cut us off despite this being very thrilling.
All right.
Really awesome and really inspiring. Great work. And kudos to the whole team behind it. Next up, in the adjacent world of the arts, we have another cool use case from Jack, who is in Spain, which is awesome. Is that right?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm staying with my girlfriend's grandparents out here.
Cool. Show us or let us hear maybe the demo, I should say.
Yeah, so let me share my screen. Let me know when you all can see it.
Yep.
Okay, so I've been working on Supertone, which is a tool to help people write music without knowing music theory. I started making beats when I was in college, and my biggest problem was that I love music and I know what I like when I hear it, but I didn't know music theory, so it was hard to write things that I enjoyed listening to. And I've been participating in Pioneer and working on making a MIDI editor. And then when GPT-3 came out, I got beta access and added a text input and kind of saw how I could throw the two together. So let's do a live demo. This is like a MIDI region here, and I can type something like a happy chord progression. So I want to hit submit. I don't have a loader yet, but it sends it to the API. And there we go. So I got a response from the API, and it loads in notes, and we can listen to it now. Did you all hear that?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so that's happy. As you all know, GPT-3 is all about prompt text. So I've loaded in various prompts and corresponding chords, but you can try to do something like a melancholy chord progression. And it's fun to play around with it because, with creativity, it's fun to almost have like happy accidents, and GPT-3 isn't perfect, but it's fun to see where it takes you. So I've been playing around with the GPT-3 in this for 4 days now, and I'm pretty excited with it so far, because when I started working on Supertone, I thought, maybe if we succeed in a couple of years, we could hire an NLP expert and do these sorts of things. And then suddenly with GPT-3 integration, I'm doing stuff that I didn't think would be possible for a lot longer of a time without a lot more resources. Yeah, that's the demo.
What's this trained on? How does it know what sad music sounds like?
So it's actually only producing, I can show you the log. There's a lot of React errors, so excuse those.
It's like letting someone into.
But it's how we know it's a real demo.
So if you see here, this is the prompt text. And then this is what I typed in, a melancholy chord progression. And the response is formatted in this way. And so what's happening right now is that I originally tried to make the program with 3 parameters, or to have the API return 3 parameters: the note value, a start time, and a duration. That proved a bit too much for GPT-3 to handle. So then I decided I'd kind of hard code the note start times and the duration and just focus on GPT-3 producing the notes. So that's why everything appears as these chorded blocks. But basically GPT-3 will say C4, E4, G4, B4, and basically give us these chords. And then I'll produce that I'll throw that into the program, and it'll play back the audio.
I think to John's question, like what data sets when GPT-3 was created gave it knowledge of chord progressions and their various characteristics? Like what did it scan?
That's a great question. Yeah, I wish I'd know. I can show you my pages doc with some other prompts I've tried.
By the way, we're only seeing just the Supertone page. I think
thank you.
You're just sharing that window.
Yeah. New share pages. So these are other prompts I tried around with.
Got it.
This really is the new engineering.
Yeah, and so you can see here's an example where I was trying to do the note, a start time in milliseconds, and then a duration in milliseconds. But I didn't get as good of results doing that. And so I switched for the sake of having something fun to play with to just doing the notes. But in the long term, as things improve, I think where I'd love to take this is be able to like find a chord progression you like, and then maybe highlight some of the notes and be like, throw a top line melody on this, make this funkier. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to play around with, and it's starting to solve my problem of writing music faster than I would be able to myself, because I still don't know much music theory.
Beautiful. Very cool stuff. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you all.
Next up, we have 2 left. N minus 2 is Josh, who is going to demo. I think it is effectively a Chrome extension of sorts, but it is a similar text expander, creative text expander for words. Wordplay. Hi, Josh. We have the demo, we don't have you. Maybe you are a GPT-3 generated person.
How's that?
There we go. The
Great.
demo was great though. We would take both if possible.
Cool, yeah, well, you can have both. Here you go. All right, so yeah, the basic idea is, you know, GPT-3 is good at generating text, so why not just make it so that it's easy for people to generate text? So you can imagine you're writing a blog post maybe about why sleep is important, and you get stuck, you're like, I don't really know how to start. Let me write this outline. You can just hit a key and just get ideas very quickly. So that's not a very useful one. Let's say like, great, what is sleep? Sleep deprivation, and maybe, you know, conclusions. Okay, like, I don't really know how to start, so you can just ask it, and then pick something.
The trigger this? Is it just you not typing will trigger it?
I can do it anyway. Right now, it's just you hit control space. You can configure it to be whatever you want. The idea is to kind of make this work anywhere, whether it's email or a text area or just an input field. Anytime you're feeling stuck, you can do that. You can also ask for replacements for other words. So well, those are pretty bad replacements. Okay, there we go. So oh, why sleep is valuable. Okay, great. You can also influence the things that come back. So maybe say this and like, you know what, that doesn't really sound right. Like, let's get some alternatives. I want something that's like longer. Okay, great. We can get even longer sentences. Or, you know, I want things that are shorter. Okay, or I want something, you can type whatever you want in here. So what kind of intro sentence do we want? Something very academic.
One thing I'm curious to ask you is in your Loom video, Josh, you described you were building models on top of GPT-3, and I'm kind of curious what that space looks like. What does that mean?
Yeah. So part of the thing that we realized when you actually try and make this work is that it really matters, the latency really matters. And the results that you get back, the stuff you get back from GPT-3 natively isn't exactly what you want. So for example, here we're skewing towards shorter sentences. We're removing sentences that have lots of punctuation, where we have other models that return worse results, but faster, so that you always see something right away. So, and you know, you can imagine building other models that adapt to how this particular person works, or score things based on, you know, how distinct are the responses, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what we're playing around with and building.
Do you close the feedback loop, which is, I feel like the biggest missing area in GPT-3 now, like it doesn't keep track of what's discarded and what's selected. Are you guys kind of closing the loop here between the suggestions that I pick in terms of improving the model in the future?
Yeah, exactly. I think that'd be the idea, is to figure out which things a particular person finds to be useful and in which context. So when you're writing an email, you know, we might want it to go a particular way. If you're writing a blog post, you might want it to go a different particular way. So figuring out which thing did you click on can give us feedback for that. Then we can then train our own models on top to kind of score the things that come back. I guess one thing I should mention is that the way we do this is by asking GPT-3 for lots of different responses and figuring out which one is the best.
Yes. Is this live now?
It will be pretty soon. You can go to wordplay.app and sign up, and the browser extension should be ready very soon. We'll reach out and start testing it with anyone that signs up.
Great, awesome. This is super cool. I would definitely use this. I'd be very curious where it takes me.
That's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think silence is acceptance when it comes to these.
Yeah, I'm thinking through like the future of writing and what that looks like. You know, is it autocomplete? Is it rewording of what's there? What that looks like is, you know, there's so much low-hanging fruit there, I think, right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I like this idea of a pair programmer for writing, you know, who's just sort of there with you, helping you along the way.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, writer's block seems like a real killer app for a lot of GPT-3 stuff. It's super fun to just like, help me dig out of my hole here.
Say some things to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also rephrasing of existing paragraphs, I think, would be also really interesting in how that could be done.
Yeah. You can put in as many things as you want in the influence box. Like we can make it also sound like Shakespeare and more academic. I don't know if it'll actually work, but yeah, you can always do more. Yeah, that's it.
Super. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, everyone.
Last but certainly not least, we have Parthi, who previously made a E6B flight computer for Android in high school that was used by 50,000 pilots globally. How about that? And they're now working on regex generation.
Hey there, everyone. Parthi, working on something pretty simple. Converts text to regex, and it's live at regex.losslesshq.com. You can go play with it if you want. Type in a couple of examples already. So let's say string of length 5 with uppercase letters. Gave it a couple of positive examples, gave it a couple of negative examples, hit generate. And you can see it gives us a couple of options. Let's copy one of those over. Let's see if that actually works. Yep. And let's try something else. Nope, it doesn't work. Let's look at a couple of other examples. We could look at like valid URLs, for example, like google.com. And you can see it's generating a couple of options for us as well. And finally, university email addresses. Gave it a positive example, parthi@columbia.edu, as well as a negative Gmail example. Let's see if this one works.
Are you automatically testing the generated regex against the positive and negative examples before
I
displaying them?
validate them against the positive and negative examples, and then I'm working on actually feeding back examples into the prompt as well to make it iterative. I also get feedback from people as to whether or not the regex work for folks. Regex is a formal language, and GPT-3 is trained on the web, and Stack Overflow probably collectively has all the regexes you'll ever need in your life. So in theory, this should work, and you should be able to never have to write regex again in the future.
This would be a great VS Code extension.
Yeah, it's true.
Where are you going to take this from here?
I made it as a side project, and there are all these questions around defensibility, around OpenAI as an API, it being accessible to everybody. I have like 5,000 people on the wait list for this. I've released it to like 250. Trying to get feedback, improve the model. I have a donate button, trying to test whether or not if there's willingness to pay. And we'll see if this becomes like a full-time project. But I'm working on another startup full-time. This was a side project.
Very cool.
It's cool. I think it's slightly unnerving that, like, of course, you're not necessarily understanding what comes out, and it looks like it works on a few examples, but does it really work? So, yeah, it's slightly worrying from that perspective.
Yeah, I was almost
True, but that's my general
generating.
experience with regular expressions. Anyway, it's a programming language you cannot debug. Yeah.
I was wondering if it's worth actually auto-generating a set of test cases and then also allowing the user to correct those. So to some extent, you separately auto-generate test cases and you can confirm whether the regex is really, in some sense, going after what you wanted to go after.
Yeah, I definitely want to use the semantic search API and just see what happens if I ask GPT-3, hey, is this valid regex, or and see like if I can use that to iteratively create something good.
I would potentially, like, on the side, bring in the docs for regex, so a person could like verify for themselves that this is actually. It's just
a good idea.
Find the docs. It's not just giving.
You could also try looking through code that uses regular expressions that's commented, and try replacing the regex with a generated regex and see if the tests pass in that code as a way of like testing. It'd be interesting. You could probably pull a lot of examples that way.
Yeah, there's probably a bunch of stuff on GitHub that I could pull in.
For example.
Yeah.
All right, very cool.
Super cool.
Thank you.
I did have one quick bonus thing, which was we have one final presenter here in Andrej. I do think it'd be cool to highlight and maybe talk about just for a minute. If you guys can see my screen, minGPT, which really starts with a photo juxtaposition that only Andrej would do. I think this is one of the better README files in GitHub. Nat would know. But this is kind of cool. Andrej, what is it? Did you build GPT-3 in your bedroom?
Yeah, so I think like we're seeing incredible outputs, of course, from these models. And I'm not sure that a lot of people realize that they're actually incredibly simple under the hood. All that's happening, right, is that a sequence of integers comes in, and then, the next integer in a sequence comes out. And so really, like when you get down to the bottom of it, the modeling is very, very straightforward. So the full implementation of the model is actually like in minGPT under model.py, and that's the full definition of the model. Everything else is mostly boilerplate and independent of GPT. It's just training of neural network. And so really like in this forward function, integers come in a batch, and a probability distribution for the next integer comes out. And what you put, like the form of the neural net is really what changed over maybe the last 2 decades. So in 2003, there's a Bengio paper on neural language modeling where this was a small MLP. In 2010 and so on, Ilya Sutskever and so on worked on natural language modeling and was an RNN. And now it's a transformer. So like the type of the neural network changed and the architecture changed, but the setup is the same and is actually incredibly simple. And so, yeah, it wasn't too complicated to build this. It's not full featured. So, there's a few more details like the byte pairing encodings and so on that would have to be so that you could reproduce a GPT. But in principle, with some of these other details and $5 million, you could actually reproduce GPT-3 with this code base. So yeah, there's not a lot that goes into it. That's all.
It's pretty awesome. And it's open source, so that's great. So obviously there's the educational goal. What should people do? Should they try to contribute? Should they try to raise $5 million to train it on something? That would be kind of exciting, right? Is there a kind of GPT at home model that should be explored instead?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think like what we're seeing right now with all the demos is people are, they're changing the prompts and they're getting different answers, but they're not changing the weights of the model. So I think in the future, we have to sort of think through how fine-tuning of the model, where you're actually changing the weights and you're changing the data set, interacts with just the prompt engineering. And so I think both will probably happen simultaneously. And we'll probably have lots of GPTs and their forks and variations and different weights that have been trained on different data sets. And so I think it could be interesting, basically, if people are able to train their own GPTs, fine-tune them, and so on. And so that's partly where this repository comes in, I think, hopefully.
What's the primary driver of cost?
Just the training itself, right? So the matrix multiplies involved in forward-backwarding all these integer sequences over and over again on massive data sets.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if there, to Daniel's offhand comment, if there really is the equivalent of GPT at home or something that you would be able to do. In other words, if enough volunteers are willing to run it, is that actually a performant way to do it, or would that just not really work?
Yeah, I'm not an expert for sure on very distributed optimization. I do think it's not like super easy to create. You need a pool of workers, you need to delegate work. The delegation of work would be very simple because you're just sending these integers around and asking people to complete integers. But then you also have to ship around all these weights and the gradients to them. And those, because there's so many parameters involved, like 175 billion, and this will grow, the communication of those gradients and the parameters, I think, will be substantial. So I'm not sure how scalable it is. There's a few tricks that people can play. But yeah, I'm not sure if that works. In a data center that is custom built for this and so on, or if you have your own machine, the communication overhead is not large within the system.
How much capital do you think you'd need in order to train something competitive with GPT-3? Training capital.
Yeah, so someone did the math based on the numbers that OpenAI released, and it was estimated roughly 5 to 10 million as the cost of training the GPT-3 model. That does not include also all of the cost that went into curating the data set. So OpenAI did a lot of work to clean their data set, try to find duplicates and remove them, what are the data sets that you use, how do you assemble them? And so there's a lot of Spark under the hood to actually like curate the data set and create it. And that's not counted, but yeah.
Yeah, the 80-20 of ML is always ETL, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, super interesting. I don't know. I hope we sparked the attention of one. We've a couple hundred people watching, so hopefully one of them at least is interested.
It might be possible that you don't have to redo all of the work, right? So, if we have the weights for GPT-3, you can just fine tune on top of your own data sets. So you could load the GPT weights, and then you have some data set that you want GPT to improve on. Instead of just, massaging the prompts, you could maybe load it up and continue fine tuning GPT-3 on just your data set for a little bit to improve the performance of GPT on that text.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so a good example of that would be the MIDI to text. And someone, asked, is there a lot of MIDI to text correspondences in the data set? There might not be. In that case, you don't expect a good performance. So if you could create a massive data set of those kinds of correspondences, how do you adjust the weights slightly to make it better in that case?
It is kind of the bear case on prompt engineering. It's not that prompt engineering is the future of programming. It's that's the only lever you have with GPT-3 currently. And so maybe to your point, if you had more levers, you could get more out of it. Instead of trying to contort those into English language, you could just directly manipulate the model. Is that right?
Exactly. And I think OpenAI mentioned that they're going to release a fine-tuning API, but they said they will release it by July. So I'm guessing that's out of date. But I think, yeah, I think they're thinking about it.
And there's no way to figure out a way to kind of ship the data between models in a distributed model. You don't think that would be worthy of further investment to ship data between like different weights? If you were to try to train on everyone's PlayStation or something?
I think it's worth doing. Again, I'm not like an expert in the distributed optimization, but there are a lot of approximations you can make. So for example, the gradients that you're communicating can be just 1 bit per dimension. I've seen papers that show that. You could be only communicating sparse subsets of the model. So every worker only works on like one little layer. And so you only need to send back sort of deltas for a small subset of the model. There's a few things that you could do. I just don't know how well they will work. It's not simple, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure.
It seems like it would be awesome if the World 2.0 Wikipedia was GPT-3 trained by everyone. That'd be pretty beautiful. We're approaching the 90-minute mark, and I know we're that's beyond the point of what's permissible on the internet. I mean, we actually passed that at the 15-second mark, so I really apologize, and I thank you all for.
Longest TikTok video I've ever seen.
Exactly, I have a lot of TikTok to be watching, and so I really must go now. But thank you all. This is pretty cool. I'm going to set up a mailing list if people want to continue to send kind of interesting demos our way. I think that could be exciting and provide a good outlook for folks. And hopefully this is interesting to people watching. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your energy. And I'll see you all on the internet somewhere. Bye-bye.